Welcome to Truth and Consequences with Doug Poppa, episode number 26 for October 19, 2020. Las Vegas Justice Court Judge Melanie ANDRESS-TOBIASSON stated during my May 7, 2018 on-the-record recorded interview with her that there is a cover-up in the unsolved 2016 Land Kauffman double homicide. Judge Tobiason also stated that the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department may have destroyed evidence in the case and that the police were protecting Shane Valentine, a convicted felon and longtime Las Vegas pimp who Judge Tobiason said committed the murders, along with Dominique Thompson, another convicted felon and pimp, and Frankie Zappia, a convicted prostitute. On October 27, 2016, the bodies of Sidney Land, 21, and Nehemiah Kauffman, 20, were found in their southwest Las Vegas apartment, both shot in the head. The following are audio excerpts from my interview with Judge Tobiason. It is not hearsay. They are the direct words of a sitting judge on the Las Vegas Justice Court.
So I'm just getting to the good part. So I give these guys this information in the beginning of October of 2016, okay? We already had the murder at Top Notch. Then, October 8th of 2016, unbeknownst to me, there is a drive-by shooting at a guy named Neo's house. Neo is a kid that was a really, really good kid in high school. He's now hanging out with Shane Valentine, their buddy, and hold on a second. And they're doing work with each together. He also ended up becoming pimp.
I'm losing your, you're getting distorted for some reason. I don't know if you're walking away from the phone or not.
Because I was putting it on my shoulder to try to look for this information.
Okay.
He was an up-and-coming pimp at this time.
Okay.
So, but Neil was taking Shane Valentine's girls, and Shane was getting pissed. So on October 8th, Shane and Neo have a little tip in text messages where Shane threatens Neo and says he's going to come shoot up Neo's house. Neo says, bring it, gives him the address and the gate code, and 10 minutes later, Shane Valentine rolls up to Neo's mom's house and ramps his car into the garage. It was a rental car rented in his name, and then fires around into that house and throws a big giant boulder through Neo's mom's window. Kauffman, Kauffman, is Neo's last name. Neo Kauffman.
Okay.
So the police go out. It's 10 o'clock in the morning. Neo doesn't want to cooperate, of course, but you've got three other witnesses, independent witnesses who lived on the street, who give a vehicle description, license plate number, description of the shooter, which matches Shane Valentine. You've got the car rented in his name. You've got a piece of the car that fell off in the driveway. And you've got Neo's mom who gives the description. Metro closes that investigation 2 days later as insufficient evidence for prosecution. Mid-October of 2015, retired Lieutenant Karen Hughes sends me a message on Facebook unrelated to this investigation. I had made a ruling in a case, and she had complimented my decision in that case. As a result of that, I reach out back to her and I say, I've got a question for you. Now, I, of course, don't realize she's the subject of the investigation either.
Just to get this on the record, right now, the subject of, when you say the investigation, we're talking about...
The FBI investigation. I didn't know at that time that she was the subject of the investigation, or at least, part of the investigation. So I reach out to her and I say, hey, I got a question for you. I said, what's going on in Vice? I said, because I've been taking information to them for over a year now, almost a year and a half. And I said, and they have blown me off over and over and over and over again. I said, I don't understand. I said, maybe they just don't give a shit because it's me. I said, but it's really frustrating and I don't understand. And she says, I'll call over there. She then tells me that she's going to call over, that she had called over there and it was going to be taken care of. October 25th, 2016, At 4:30 in the afternoon, I get a phone call from Detective Van Cleef, and he's frantic. And he says, we have a problem. I said, what's the problem? He said, I was asked to sit in on an interview today. He goes, I sit down, and the girl comes into the interview, and the detective who's questioning her is a detective by the name of Justine Gaddis, Gadus. Of all of them, she should be in prison for what she did to me and my daughter.
Who, Justine Gaddis?
So, yeah.
What'd she do?
So, well, I'm going to tell you.
Okay.
She calls Ty Bowden and says she would like to interview his daughter, that they have received information that she is a prostitute or has, potentially has information with regard to a pimp and human trafficking of juveniles. So they call her in for an interview rather than do independent investigation.
Right.
Because, typically teenage girls will admit in front of their police officer dads that they're prostitutes. I'm being sarcastic, clearly. So they bring her in for an interview with her police officer father. First question out of Justine Gaddis's mouth. Do you know Sarah Tobiason? Yes, I do. She's one of my best friends. Second statement out of Justine Gaddis's mouth. We got your name from her mom. She says you're working as a prostitute for a pimp by the name of Shane Valentine.
Jesus.
Yeah. Yep. I get the call from Van Cleef, who is beside himself. He goes, I don't know what to do. And I said, how about you get the fuck back in there and fix this? I go, she just put a fucking target on my daughter. I go, you think this guy's going to kill me? He's not going to kill me. He's going to kill my kid. I go, what is wrong with you people? I said, there is no way that this was an accident. I go, no vice detective, I don't care if they've been there for one day, would do that by accident. I go, this was intentional. And so he goes back into the interview. He calls me when the interview's over, and he's like, well, we talked to her, and we told her not to talk to your daughter about it. I go, are you an idiot? I go, she's on the phone with my daughter right now. I go, in fact, I'll bet you in 30 seconds I have a call from my daughter. Sure as shit, I get a text message from my daughter. Are you serious? You called the police on us? So I bring my daughter and Ollie to my house. I tell them, I go, you guys need to get to the house right now. You're not safe. So
you brought your daughter. You said you brought your daughter and who to your house?
Allie, the daughter of the police officer that they had just outed me to.
What's her name?
Allie.
How do you spell that?
Allie.
Okay.
So I bring them to my house. I have to kind of give them the song and dance because I don't really want to tell them yet that, I don't want to admit to them at this point that I've been bringing information to the cops because, they're still young and they're still, I don't want to lose my connection with them, especially right now.
Right.
So I give them a song and dance about why the police would do this. But I make it very clear to them that they are not safe. And when Van Cleef calls me back, he and Justine want to meet with me and my daughter, and I told them basically to, I won't tell you what I said, but it wasn't very nice. And I said, you guys have a reason for doing what you did, and I don't know what it is. I said, but if something happens to my daughter, we can have a real big fucking problem. So that night, unbeknownst to me at this time, Allie leaves my house and she puts out a tweet about the fact that she was called in and questioned by Vice.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Now, unfortunately, at this point, Allie was no longer associated with Shane Valentine. She was associated with Neo Kauffman. And like I said, they had had a beef because Shane was upset that Neo was taking Shane's goals. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
So that night at about 12:30, so it would have been 12:30, October 26th, 12:30 a.m., Shane Valentine, the guy by the name of Dominique Thompson, he went by Domo, D-O-M-O, and a girl by the name of Frankie F-R-A-N-K-I-E, Zappia, Z-A-P-P-I-A.
What was Dominic's last
Go
name?
to Thompson.
Thompson? Okay.
It's Dominique
Dominic?
Thompson.
Dominique.
Q-U-E at the end.
That's a male, right?
Dominic.
Okay.
It is a male. He's a pimp. His name's Domo. D-O-M-O.
Okay.
Shane, Domo, and Frankie, whose stepdad is a police officer by the name of Dano, D-A-N-O, Giersdorf, G-I-E-R-S-D-O-R-S. Go to Neo's house and execute Neo and his girlfriend, Sydney Land, whose dad is a fire captain. Dano,
Right.
D-A-N-O,
Right.
Giersdorf, is the stepfather of Frankie Zappia, one of the suspects in the double homicide that happened 8 hours after I was outed as a source of information to one of Shane Valentine's prostitutes who had left him and was now working for Neo. 8 hours later, her new pimp is killed by her old pimp because she put out on Twitter that she had been called in and interviewed by Vice. They know, and everyone else knows, that this murder happened as a result of what they did that day. So, the first detective, so this happens Tuesday.
And who got killed?
Bodies are
Who
found.
got killed, Melanie, in that in the shooting? Who'd they kill?
Neo Kauffman, Neo, the kid that had been doing the burglaries with Shane.
Oh, he got killed.
He got shot in the head. He got executed. Shot in the back of the head. And his girlfriend, Sydney Land. Don't forget, Shane Valentine shot up Neo's house October 8th, and Metro closed the case as insufficient evidence for prosecution, even though they have 3 independent eyewitnesses and vehicle descriptions and proof that Shane was there.
Okay. And Neil Kaufman's girlfriend is who? What's her name?
Sydney, S-Y-D-N-E-Y, Land, L-A-N-D. She was 20-year-old girl from a good Mormon family whose dad is a fire captain.
Jesus.
She got shot in the face after she got beat up and drug around and had blood burns all over her. Okay?
The fire captain here in Vegas?
Yes.
Did she die or she survived?
She was from... No, she's dead. It was a double homicide. They shot her in the face.
Jesus. How come I wonder why I didn't hear about this double homicide.
You heard about it, maybe. Well, no, because they're covering it up. That's why you haven't heard about it.
So has anybody been indicted for this double murder?
No, that's what I just said. They're covering it up. I'll finish the story.
Yeah, go ahead.
So here's what happened.
Go ahead. I'm not going to interrupt you.
They find the bodies Thursday morning, 2 days after they've been killed. They know immediately that Shane is one of the suspects. Okay?
Right.
They're able to ping his phone at the apartment at the time of the shooting. But here's what they don't do. They don't call me and tell me. So Friday night, they find the bodies Thursday morning. Friday night at midnight, I come home from a concert and my daughter comes to me and she says, Mom, I got to talk to you. She said, you know that double homicide when my friend Neo got shot? I said, yeah. She says, Shane did it. And I don't even ask her how she knows because for some reason all the kids on the street know everything and the cops don't know shit. So I text Detective Van Cleef at midnight on Friday, so it would have been the 25th, 26th, 27th, 28th of October. And I said, hey, you got the intel on the suspect?
Killed.
So I text Detective Van Cleef. I go, you got any intel on the suspect in this double homicide? Knowing that they knew, and he goes, yeah, I heard about that yesterday morning. So I called him, and I said, You knew yesterday morning that Shane Valentine was a suspect in this double homicide that happened 8 hours after you outed me as a source of information, putting my daughter's life in danger. And you didn't think that maybe I should get a heads up? That maybe somebody should have called me and told me that he was a suspect in this double homicide? And I told him Tuesday when I said to him, I go, Shane Valentine is a murder waiting to happen. It better not fucking be my daughter. So within 8 hours, I was proven right because Shane Valentine was involved in the double homicide of these two kids. And so he says to me, oh, you guys aren't in danger. You know, he's on the run. He's not worried about you guys. And I said, let me explain something to you. I go, he's already killed 2 people. You think he gives a shit about 2 more? I said, and apparently nobody cares about the crimes he commits, so he probably doesn't really have to worry about it.
And why do you think that nobody cares about the crimes he commits?
Because they never investigate them, and he never gets arrested for them, unless, of course, they're on videotape and they can't. I mean, they had opportunities over and over and over. I mean, he didn't even get charged in the case with the other judge's daughter, where he was there and he was directing her beating.
And why do you think it is? Why do you think he's protected?
Because he works for Molly Mall. He's protected. They've been paid to protect him.
Okay, the cops.
Yes.
By Molly Mall.
I mean, you're never gonna get them to say that, but he works for Molly Mall. He is associated with Molly Mall. Anyway, so these murders happened. The first detective who is investigating the case, thank God, is someone who knows me and respects me and I have a good relationship with. He tells me for the first 3 or 4 weeks after the murders, while Shane Valentine is on the run, what information they have and what proof they have that Shane's involved. And they have his phone ping at the apartment. And then what happens is after the murders, the phone is turned off almost immediately. And then the next time his phone is turned on, it's in Baker, California. So he turns his phone off as soon as the murders are committed, and then turns it back on in Baker. They wind up catching him sometime later in Burbank, California, sleeping in, lo and behold, the same rental car that he was in when he shot up Neo's house. Okay? Now, after the double homicide, they get Neo's phone, and there's like 40,000 text messages on it. Apparently, Neo never deleted his text. There's text messages between Neo and Shane. There's text messages between Allie and Neo confirming that she has an involvement with Neo, prostitution-related involvement with Neo. And there are many, many, many other text messages on this phone, but I'm advised of this by the detective working the case, that they have this information. They therefore reopen the drive-by shooting at Neo's mom's house on October 8th and subsequently filed charges against Shane for that, okay? Even though they didn't have enough evidence before. So, look, they really did. But I'm told that they have Domo's DNA, that Frankie's phone pings at the apartment, that they caught Frankie in all kinds of lies. And one of the most significant things is that after the 2 are dead, nobody ever texts them again. Like Shane and Frankie and Domo never send them another text. You know, like they know they're dead.
Right.
You know how these kids are. They text each other 527,000 times a day.
Right.
They never send another text. So there's a lot more information about how they know that Shane's involved, but they know. So Shane gets arrested in California. He gets extradited back to California, or back to Vegas. He gets charged with the drive-by shooting. And I find out from the homicide detective that there are 4 other, now mind you, he's been out on bail on a burglary charge since May. And then the murders are committed in October. There were 4 other burglary cases that were sitting in the DA's office that had DNA and fingerprints that tied Shane Valentine to those burglaries that they never filed. He's out on bail on a burglary. They closed a drive-by shooting case that they knew he did. And they got 4 other cases where they have DNA and fingerprints, and they don't file and revoke his bail. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Then there's a lieutenant who tells me that they believe he's good for 600 burglaries during that time frame where he was out on bail. That lieutenant was, it was actually a captain, I'm sorry, Captain Raybuck, Todd Raybuck. Okay? He was a lieutenant when I talked to him, and then he got promoted to captain when he wrote the memo, which I will provide to you.
Okay.
So there's a significance to them having the text messages between Ali, the girl they outed me to, the cop's daughter,
Right.
and Neo. Because at this point in time, they now know that Ali is in fact a prostitute. Because what they tried to do after the interview is they tried to tell me that she was not, that she didn't even know who Shane Valentine was, and that it was in fact my daughter who had introduced her to Shane Valentine. And I wasn't in a position to argue with them or even have discussions with them because they had outed me. So once those murders happened, they learned that in fact she is.
Are you married to a Metro cop?
He's retired, and no, he didn't help me.
He's not helping you?
He hasn't helped me through any of this. I was the one who went to Shane Valentine's house, kicking the door. I was the one who went to the cops. I was the one who followed my daughter. I was the one who made sure she was safe. No, he didn't help me.
Why not? What does he think about all this?
I can't answer that question for you. Because he probably thought I was nuts. Because he probably judged my daughter rather than wanting to save her. Because we're just 2 very different kinds of people. He'd rather put his head in the sand like everybody else, and that's just the way it is.
And is his name his name Tobiason? That's his name?
Yeah. His first name's Todd. Last name's Tobiason.
Yeah, I don't know him. I heard the name, but I don't know him personally.
He's a nice guy. He just, he's like 90% of the rest of the population. He's a sheep.
Right.
He just allows this shit to happen and just kind of accepts or believes that it's not really as bad as it is. Metro was able to call it, I don't care why, it doesn't matter why. Metro finds out that a judge is giving information to the FBI and is able to call the FBI and tell their agent not to get information from the judge anymore about the prostitution activities that she reported to Vice that were ignored and resulted in 3 murders. It doesn't matter why. The fact it happened is the story.
Okay.
Who cares what their motivation is? It's disgusting. Why would they not want me to give information to the FBI about this? Because it makes them look really fucking bad. And they know that the fact that they outed me got 2 people killed. They weren't the 2 people they were trying to get killed, me and my daughter. But it got 2 people killed.
Let me ask you.
I'll tell you, Joe does not want this story out there. The thing I'm involved in, although it's tied to Molly Mall, resulted in 3 murders that are not being investigated, that are not part of that investigation. They ignored me for a year and a half, and it resulted in 3 murders. And I was giving that information to the FBI in hopes that at some point they might investigate that as well, whether it had a connection to the ongoing investigation or it resulted in an additional investigation. I was providing them information on my situation in hopes that they would investigate it, and they shut their agent down and told him he was to stand down, not to speak to me anymore. They were not investigating this. They were not going to take the information on it, and he was not to speak to me anymore. ICE has never arrested Shane Valentine. Never. Vice has never. Homicide reopened the drive-by shooting.
Okay.
And he pled to a burglary because they found out after he was a suspect in the double homicide that he had 4 burglaries sitting at the DA's office that they never filed. Even though he was out on bail on another burglary, they had 4 with DNA and fingerprints that they never filed.
I got to look at the charges, but he wasn't charged and convicted of the murders?
Nobody has been arrested in the murders. I told you that. He was a suspect in the murders. They have all the evidence they need to make arrests in the murders. You start asking me questions and we got off track, and
right.
I could have answered, but I'm telling you, it's complicated and it will take more than this but I told you about the detective who was originally on the case, who told me all the evidence they had that showed it was Shane, Domo, and Frankie. A month after the double homicide, they take him off the case. That never happens. If you start a murder case, you finish a murder case unless you retire. They take him off the case. They make another detective the lead detective. His name is Mitch Dosh. Guess who he lives by? Guess he lives on the same street as Dano Giersdorf. You know why? Because he and Dano Giersdorf have been friends for 30 years and bought houses together on the same street. You know how I know this? Because Dano Giersdorf's other stepdaughter told me this. So now the detective on the case who says that Shane Valentine is the only suspect until he says otherwise has done nothing. I have all the text messages between him and Sydney Lamb's mom where he says, we have other murder cases to work on. We'll get back to your daughters eventually. Now, 1 week after they found out I was talking to the FBI, they did a press conference where they said Shane Valentine is no longer a person of interest in this murder. That was 1 year and 3 weeks after the murder happened. And up until the minute they found out I was talking to the FBI, Shane was a suspect. The minute they found out I was talking to the FBI, they do a press conference saying he's not a suspect. The problem is they don't know that I know what evidence they have. Chances are they've destroyed it by now.
A few closing remarks. Judge Tobiason said that Sidney Land's father is a fire captain. Steve Land is a Clark County firefighter and paramedic, but not a fire captain, at least not at this time. As I said in previous podcasts, Judge Tobiason confirmed to me in an email that the homicide detective she described in the interview as receiving details of the double homicide investigation from was in fact Las Vegas Metro Police homicide detective Jared Grimmett. As I reported in a prior podcast, Judge Tobiason's attorneys wrote in their response to the formal statement of charges that were filed against Judge Tobiason by the Nevada Commission on Judicial Discipline that Judge Tobiason was in the clear and did not meddle into the double homicide investigation because Detective Grimmett had told the Judicial Commission investigator during his interview that Judge Tobiason did not meddle into the investigation and he never gave her confidential information. Tobiason's own attorneys, in effect, threw their own client under the bus, because if they believe Detective Grimmett, as they stated, which I don't, then they are admitting that Judge Tobiason lied to me during my interview with her, and she therefore fabricated a story to an investigative journalist during an on-the-record recorded interview. That in itself would be more than enough, in my opinion, to have Judge Tobiason removed from the bench and disbarred. Apparently, this fact has not made it to the local Las Vegas media. I have said this before and I will say it again. On this matter, I do not believe that Judge Tobiason is lying about receiving information about the Land Kauffman murders from Detective Grimmett, and I'll have more on that in a future podcast. Further, Grimmett wasn't the only police officer who Tobiason was getting information from. You heard her say in that interview that she had received information about Shane Valentine from then Lieutenant Todd Raybuck. So once again, Tobiason was getting information from the police only because of her position as a judge. To Judge Tobiason's credit, though, as I reported in a prior podcast, she was proven to be telling the truth when she told me during the interview that Vice detectives failed to act on her information about the unlicensed club, Top Notch, and then a murder happened outside that establishment in September of 2016. Clark County Sheriff Joe Lombardo, who runs the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department, confirmed Tobiason's account to a Judicial Commission investigator. And we now know that Judge Tobiason was indeed in contact with the FBI, just as she told me she was during the interview. Much more coming, folks, that you have never heard before in any of my podcasts. Thanks for listening, and remember to follow Truth and Consequences with Doug Poppa on Facebook and YouTube.